And welcome to our quick informational meeting tonight. So real quick, how the meeting will be broken up today. The first half will cover our code of conduct, which is something that's already been communicated and it's been sent out to date now to about 5, 6 months or so, I believe. And now we're at the process of really getting all of our phong trào on. And then the second half, it's reserved for các anh chị huấn luyện viên to better understand the continuing professional development process, the requirement, etc. And so just a little bit as a plug-in before we kick off. I'm sure many of you know là phong trào đang đẩy ra the Wonders of the Mass video series. And with it really comes our responsibility as huấn trưởng to really live it and also to help share with các em. And just as an anecdote, phong trào is becoming more of a corporation enterprise. Think of it as a company of workers who are faith leaders, youth ministry leaders in the business or our profession, quote unquote, really to evangelize and bring the youth, bring us closer to Christ. And just as with any organization, there are expected guidelines, code of conduct, and over the years too, sort of our phong trào, not that we don't have any, we've always had them and sort of expected. And when you attend cấp 1, one of the lessons that you often encounter with is tư cách và đạo đức của người huấn trưởng, sort of address the guidelines and the ways in which we ought to carry ourselves as a thành viên của phong trào. But nonetheless, as we're becoming more of an organization, a big organization, and winning the support of the church here in America, it then becomes our responsibility as well to have a document in place so that we can begin to implement and then hold our members accountable. Because like they say nowadays, and especially if you're in the medical field, you don't have it written down, it doesn't exist. And so we're in that process and we're doing the best that we can. All right, so with that, the code of conduct has already been disseminated and it's already been out there. We've consulted our legal team, we consulted some of the dioceses in federal and at the national level and at the diocese and the parish level, and we combine a document together. For the most part, it's quite self-explanatory, but nonetheless, there are requests for us to kind of just go over that briefly, and so we'll do that today, and we'll have some room at the end for some questions for folks that may have. Okay, and then at the end, we'll talk about how that's integrated into the membership system, where then you don't really need to assign it manually, where it's automatically integrated into the system. And then soon it'll become a requirement for the entire organization. One, not only to be a member of the membership system so that we have accountability of our members, but also to consent to the code of conduct as a requirement from Cal. Yeah. All right. So that's a little bit there where we're at. So I'll share screen real quick to the document and I'll just highlight some of the things here. But before I start, I want to take a second to acknowledge the many works of our huấn trưởng along the years who put into this. In particular, Trưởng Hạn in, I believe in Oregon, in Liên đoàn Nha Siêu, who sort of worked and provide the technical translation and terminology as she's a policy writer for the mayor or something within her town. So we're blessed to have her. And then many of our other huấn trưởng working to support it. And even as early as today, providing some edits. So thank you, Trưởng Phượng and some of the other huấn trưởng. Yeah. So I'll pull my screen real quick here, and then we'll take a look at it and we'll go through. All right, so everyone should see real quick the document. All right, and I'll just highlight some of the key area that we ought to focus on, but nonetheless, all are invited to read through. All right, and so again, the purpose of this is to serve as a general guideline. Now, we can spend hours and hours and have a full textbook to address every specific circumstances, mỗi cái hoàn cảnh, mỗi cái trường hợp, and as you know, that generally doesn't provide much other than just have an extended document. But really, it's a general guide for us as thiếu nhi thánh thể, as members of một cái phong trào, and how we go about carrying ourselves, whether it be at sinh hoạt, at church, at training camp, at convention, at conferences, and even sometimes beyond just in the community. I like to take on this notion of our faith. You are a Catholic everywhere that you go, not just when you come to TV or when to come to sinh hoạt, but you live your life as a Catholic. And so the vocation, cái ơn gọi của huynh trưởng của mình it is a lifestyle. It's not just a moment in time. And so as you begin, invite you to kind of see what it really means for us to be huân trưởng. All right. And the highlight here is the code of conduct here của phong trào. It is not meant to replace, and I'll say it again, it is not meant to replace, to substitute, or to supersede your diocese or even your parish, right? You belong to a parish. The parish may have expectation. You belong to a diocese or an archdiocese. They have their own code of conduct, right? General for liability and the law, it's whichever code of conduct that's a stricter policy, you follow with that. So you follow with that. But for us at VEYM, sometimes when we have event outside of your diocese, for example, một cái sa mạc của liên đoàn, sometimes that's beyond the diocese. We need some guidelines, right? For a national event where we come together, you may be from another state and you may say, well, I'm not from that area, so I don't subscribe to that. But as a member of phong trào, and that's why the purpose of us having a document so that we can cover. Now, depending on where you're at, some it may address some of the requirements that does not apply to phong trào, but whereas this document is specifically for us, as it addresses uniform, you know, in your diocese, I don't think they talk about you wearing uniform, so etc. All right. Moving down. So it's important to know that this is not just to huân trưởng. You know, I think the original document that was sent out, I think we said huân trưởng, but it's been modified. It's really VEYM, so meaning all adult members. Tất cả các thành viên 18 tuổi trở lên. So you can be hiệp sĩ trưởng thành, trợ tá, huân trưởng, huấn luyện viên, trợ úy, tương úy, even. As long as you're an adult member in this definition, here is 18 years old or older, you are considered quote-unquote VEYM members, and you are expected to carry yourself in accordance with the manual. All right, and then any behavior that are considered a violation of the code of conduct or against the ways in which we ought to carry ourselves, then we have a responsibility to make known to each other. I think sometimes too within our own văn hóa, our own culture, that we shy away from confronting or talking about some of the challenges. I would invite us to adopt more of this. Is where I think the Western, what they've been good at is to really have a pastoral engagement with one another. And sometimes there's a lot of miscommunication. There's a lot of information that we may not have. So being able to engage and talk to folks. All right. And then when there are severe violation, and then we'll talk about it, this is where it's important for every đoàn to follow through with an inquiry. And when it involves misconduct, sexual misconduct, etc., that needs to be elevated and notified to liên đoàn, and then liên đoàn then inform headquarters. Now, even though that's the chain, if you're unable to, you can always go directly to liên đoàn or go directly to Trung ương, because the grave matter of the safety of an individual supersedes sort of a lot of our concern. So if you know a team member is in danger, or they've been exploited in some way, we have a responsibility to make known right away so that we can intervene. And believe me, we may think that this doesn't happen. I can sit here and I can look you in the eye and say it has happened. Actually, it has happened multiple times within phong trào của mình. And so that's why hence this is in place. Okay. All right. And so little clause D there, just remind us what I said early on, that, when you become a huân trưởng, when you're an adult member of an organization, you're not only representing yourself, you now represent phong trào. What you do reflects on phong trào, and the things that you may do without thinking, that in turn can have negative impact on phong trào. And as we know, with some of the recent incidents that happened, it does impact phong trào dramatically. Okay. All right, so real quick, many of these you can read through. They're pretty much straightforward. And so I'll just highlight some of the things that we ought to really focus on. So you can read through this on your own. You do know that we have a nội quy. We do have a quy chế huấn luyện, which is the bylaw or the servant leader training manual. And so we're expected to follow through with that, just as any teaching of the church, Christian standards, etc. All of that are expected. Now, we are expected to treat other and ourselves with respect as well, and professional. Now, that translates across the board when you interact with one another. Sometimes I think within phong trào, often we see, we form cliques or form theo nhóm just because you like that nhóm better and you gravitate towards that particular nhóm. In essence, I think that's separation. Anytime you have efforts to break the unity, then we're not truly living to our calling as Christ, as a family, as a body of Christ together. And so I would invite all thành phần của phong trào. Sometimes, we have a responsibility to come together to help and to support one another. And there's a difference between sort of not liking someone or not being compatible with someone, completely understandable. But when it comes to the work of the Liên đoàn, work of a đoàn, we ought to come together and not only pick and choose to come to events and things that you're more gravitated towards the person that you're in accordance with. Right. So continue to do that. Obviously, not to abuse minor neglect, and we'll go further in detail in that. And that's very much standard across parish and archdiocese, so we don't need to exhaust more time on it. But do know that because we're in the care of a lot of our youth and a lot of our young members, that often is important. VEYM, now, there's a sort of this expectation for all of us as members to wear our uniform. So part of our conduct is, when you look at the word uniform, is to unite, to unify, to have one similar presentation. It is no longer uniform when we all sort of wear things that we find comfortable in wearing, right? And there are many times that we've seen, whether it be at Đại hội, Thánh Mẫu, or off event, we will see, I'm just throwing out examples, stiletto shoes, right? High heel shoes, and colorful design pants and skirts, what have you, and then you have your shirt and your khăn on top. I do understand looking good and being fashionable, completely understand, and especially in this young generation. But I think there's a greater calling for all of us, a calling of sacrifice and charity. And as many of us know, as huynh trưởng, we're called to sống một đời sống hy sinh cao thượng. And so in that effort, I invite all of you, let's be united, let's work together. And that's why we have a uniform. That's why it's called a uniform. Help each other, remind each other that when you see each other wearing uniform that are out of the code, be pastoral, engage, and remind one another and help each other. It is only a uniform. We all stand by it together. And so those are our expectations. Similarly with khăn and how the ways in which we wear khăn. And by the way, khăn, this is sacramental. It's been blessed. And often, many times we see too, this is sort of tossed and thrown in other places where it shouldn't be. And invite all of you again to really be mindful of the khăn của mình, the fact that it is sacramental, has been blessed, and that we keep it with us. The last item here on here that you see here, I think it's often important. As a member of an organization, and I'll zoom out, we have that responsibility to support the phong trào. And so our phong trào, we have a headquarters office that sells uniform, that sells scarves and shirts and skirts. I think it's doing a disservice or uncharitable or lack of justice to phong trào when we sort of outsource to other quote unquote cheaper vendors to provide the uniform and the service for us. I would invite folks to have that responsibility, but also that charity to support phong trào, because we have a responsibility to phong trào versus những cái công việc khác. And I do know in the past at Đại hội về Đại hội Thánh Thể, etc., there are certain groups that would then make áo uniform and đem ra đó bán ngoài đó luôn. And granted, it may be for a good cause, but I think to then help them and engage them to have them communicate with us so that one, there's copyright, or there's intellectual property, etc., that we can also take a look at. And so mời các trưởng be mindful of that. Yeah. All right. And so the type of misconduct, please continue to read on it. Pretty much similar to the diocese that most of you subscribe to. Similarly with phong trào, when we're working with các em, there's a clause that I highlight here. The presence of having alcohol at events. It is a violation of our code of conduct. One, when we have sort of minor presence. Minor present in the presence of the parents, that's separate because their parents are a guardian, they may give permission. But a lot of time at your training camps, at your event, when you have minors and alcohol is present, that is against the code of conduct của phong trào. And when you do so, again, we're separating ourselves from the entire phong trào. So xin các trưởng remind, be able to remember and do so. And very much so for sa mạc huấn luyện and huấn luyện viên, usually ban tổ chức will give out sort of the the code of conduct for the event. And for the very most part, it's often there's no alcohol, no drugs, no weapon. But yet we continue to see that at the event. And this is where we're inviting you to take a moment of reflection. And what does that mean when we consciously go against it, or to purposely introduce alcohol when in fact it's been communicated not to have so at an event. And what does that mean for us? And as we're trying to teach các em as well. So xin các trưởng reflect more on that. All right. Some of the item on the bottom there continue on, very much straightforward as well in terms of sexual misconduct, sexual content, harassment, bullying, and some of the items that are discussed. Often that's very much there. And I think now too, with the technology that we have, the camera, the video camera, please be careful, as that often does generate a whole lot of problems. So please read through the document here. All right. The other item, please spend some time to read through the social media interaction. As society is becoming more present on the virtual platform, it's important for us to understand what that entails when we work with các em minor trong đoàn của mình. And this for mostly huấn trưởng at the đoàn level, because at the liên đoàn we deal mostly with các anh chị huấn trưởng, but at the đoàn level to see what is expected of us. Definitely never have any one-on-one interaction or alone. Usually the parish does a good job communicating that, and a lot of this is borrowed too from a lot of the dioceses. So please look through at that. Similarly with overnight, with transportation, and how to get permission so that you can pretty much follow through. All right, particularly for our phong trào with regards to whether or not a huấn trưởng member who's in active status or not, or if a huấn trưởng goes to another đoàn to visit, or to say, hey, I'd like to join your đoàn. So there's a process in place so that you, one, can ensure that the person is in good status or not, what is required, and there's a way for you to also check and follow up. So if you read part 2 here, it outline very specifically A, B, and C in terms of what are the steps that you need to do when you go visit another chapter. You shouldn't just show up and pop in, right? So there's communication to the chapter, and if you're visiting, or if you're moving to another area, all of these are very much outlined to help us stay in check. And then later on, you see the importance of having a profile on our membership database, so that it's helping us to kind of go through the process. Now, there's also a process of care for those who've been involved or who've dealt with this in the past. And this is how our VEYM wellness program as a resource was stood up. While the diocese or law enforcement or phong trào is doing the inquiry process, the members who are involved, they'll be put on an abeyance status, meaning it's just a temporary hold until we clear out all the facts and know what's going on. Sometimes that can be stressful for the individual, those of you who've been through with some. So we have sort of resources or people that these members can call and get some support from as a tool to help one goes through. And then what will happen, so generally, please read that. Once that's done, Ban chấp hành Trung ương will communicate to the corresponding chapter president, the chaplain, the league of chapter, regarding the individual, whether or not the individual is still having active faculty status to serve in phong trào because they're working with các em or not. And generally, there's a memo that goes out. And generally, when this happens, it is not a decision that we make lightly. It often does take a full committee reviewing all the information. Once that's done, we communicate all of those out to all the parties involved. And then later on, you will see how within the membership portal management system, it will help us when you're not able to see anyone on there, meaning they don't have active status. Right. So a little bit about here. So please read through. So we included a couple forms that you can fill out. Should there be an incident? Should there be something that happened within your chapter, within your legal chapter, within your training camp, so that you can document? Believe me, these do come in handy significantly with some of the things that we have dealt with in the past. And then last but not least, a couple months ago, we sent this out requiring all huấn trưởng, if you're a member of phong trào, you need to acknowledge this. and it is in paper format. So thanks be to God for our IT team. They've been working hard at it to be able to integrate this into the membership management system. So now you just need to go back in there and sign it, acknowledge it digitally, and that will help us to get everyone up to compliance status from CAL. And so I'll pause that real quick. Any questions so far with this document before I turn over to IT to demo how you would go into the membership management system to acknowledge? Yeah. Okay. It's pretty much straightforward. So, take the time to kind of look through, talk it over with your huấn trưởng, talk it over with your members, but address all the key points that I just highlight early on, which is very critical as it pertains to phong trào. Yeah. All right, so nếu mà quý trưởng không có any questions regarding the code of conduct, again, it is clear. We had it run through with legal. If you find other errors with it, if you have other recommendation, please by all means let us know. Send an email to headquarters@veym.net, and we'll continue to update this and we'll continue to work this together. Okay. All right. So let me introduce to you. He is our former Leonard Joan of Arc, but since then he joined the IT team and has been able to share a lot of his God-given gift within the IT world, and so he's been able to help us. And so, Joe, take it away.
I was the formerly nudging for JP2, not Joan of Arc.
Just as did I say Joan of Arc?
You said Joan of Arc. I was like, I never knew I moved.
Anyways, JP2.
Thank you, everybody. So I'm just going to share my screen and we'll walk through the members portal. So the entirety of the code of conduct is uploaded already onto the members portal. I'll show you. We'll do a whole demo tonight. And the website's actually being updated so that the agreement form, the acknowledgement form, is now replaced with the entirety of the document of the code of conduct. That will take a couple minutes to update, so it's not live right now, but the members portal is. So let me just share my screen here. Okay, hopefully everybody can see this. So as usual, in the members portal, you would sign in. I'm using a dummy account so that you can see how, as a regular user, it would look. To do the code of conduct, you just go to your profile. So you go to edit profile. Here's all your information. Thank you, Sujung Ai, for this profile picture that we used. At the bottom, if you scroll all the way down, you'll see the code of conduct. There's a little information box here. Complete your code of conduct, read the code of conduct carefully. Your current status is always going to be pending signature unless you've already read it and signed it. So all you have to do is click the button to the right. And the entirety of the code of conduct is here in full. So please take the time to read it through. The caveat for this is the appendix forms, the ones to report, is not here. That's why at the bottom of this, you have a link here that you can download the entirety of the code of conduct. That includes the appendix A and B for reporting purposes. So I suggest that you download a copy for yourself to keep on your computer before you sign it. Once you click acknowledge and sign, it's implied that you have read the code of conduct and will adhere to it. So once you click it, your status will change to signed. And that's pretty much the steps for a huấn trưởng for a regular user. Now the question came about how do I check if other users have signed it? So this is usually reserved for đoàn trưởng đoàn phó or liên đoàn trưởng liên đoàn phó or those in Trung ương. And you can request VEYM IT to produce the a list of those that are signed in. I will show you a quick example. Let's see if I can share this one too. Sorry, I'll share the other screen. So here's my test, just a quick screen for you here. This is my real account. I've already signed it. So as you can see, my status is signed. The test account that we just walked through, it was currently unsigned from admin perspective, but we can show you. So this is just for myself that I did sign it. So the live walkthrough we just did does update live. So for đoàn trưởng đoàn phó, you can request these. And that's it.
Right. Thank you, Jing Joe. And I believe he has a video too, pretty neat, that does a walkthrough video graphically, so that everyone can follow through. And I'm just going to go through some of the questions here. Yeah, is this a one-time sign and good for a lifetime deal? Correct. This is a one-time sign. So once you sign it, it is under the expectation that you understand cái code of conduct của phong trào as you continue on của phong trào. Those who sign it via the paper form, do they have to sign it again online? So I'm gonna ask out of charity and out of Buckeye and out of love for Phong Chao. Yes, it would help us significantly, as you see Joe just did. Literally, it takes about a couple of seconds or so. So please do so virtually, digitally online through the profile. And this is where, if you're liên đoàn trưởng in ban chấp hành, please get all of your huấn trưởng on this, because soon we're going to be beginning to implement. If you're not in the system, meaning you are not a member của phong trào, and then that impacts whether or not you can tank up, go to Samak, and etc. And so please, we've communicated this early on already. We're gonna give it a year since we've communicated, which means there's no reason why one has not been on there yet, because it's been a year long, and we've been continuing to message this regularly. So please get your team on, because there will come a point where if you're not in the system, meaning you either are quote unquote suspended or terminated, not in good status, and then that doesn't look good. So we don't want that to happen. We want you to continue to be actively involved, because the ministry is important. Okay, thank you. And then, okay, Trưởng Phượng has a long one. Most of the views need to be reported to Archdiocese Safe. Absolutely. Again, parish, diocese that continue to be included would be separate from that. Correct. So often, too, we would work with that. And there's a reason why we report to VEYM, is because what happened in the diocese, if that's not been known to VEYM, we have no clue. So that essentially that person, while they may be quote unquote forbidden to sinh hoạt in the diocese, they can just sort of move or go to another area and begin joining again, and without us having any clue. So that would be, so yes, you would inform the diocese, follow through with the guidance from the diocese, and also at the same time inform VEYM. And generally what VEYM does is we then work with the diocese to get status update. And a lot of time it would be the diocese who would be driving this. All right, next, must report sent to chapter. Would if it's report to the, for V1, the report must be sent to the chapter president and chaplain. All right, so that's a notification. We notify the chapter so that the chapter and the chaplain knows the status of their member. What if it's to report on them? Oh, what if the đoàn trưởng is the quote unquote individual who may
And you on mute accidentally, something like that. Let's
Okay.
start over from the đoàn trưởng when you mentioned đoàn trưởng and you cut off.
Okay. All right. Please don't mute me. All right. So where was I? So what if the đoàn trưởng is the quote unquote alleged offender, correct? All right. And so if you're đoàn trưởng, you can always go to đoàn phó, hopefully. But if that's not the case, if you're đoàn trưởng, then you go to cha tiếng úy and talk. You can also go to your ban chấp hành của liên đoàn. And if the person is the cha tiếng úy, you know, things may happen. There are other members within the community that you can go to. And if it's a cha tiếng úy, and if you're uncomfortable with anyone else, you can go directly to the diocese. Remember, reporting, there isn't a sort of a chain of command. If an individual is violating, is generating harm to someone, and you're suspecting it and you have information, you can go directly to the diocese. You can do an anonymous call. So there are many other information pertaining to the diocese. All dioceses, to my awareness, has a hotline that you can communicate. They're completely confidential, and they'll work with you along the way. Yeah. All right. But the role here within Phong Trào is that needs to make known to Phong Trào so that we can also protect other members from harm. All right. And then very cute profile. So I don't think I need to read further. It's indeed very cute. Who do we send the request for the status report to? If it's to notify us, if I'm understanding your question correctly, Kim Thư nha, send it to Ban chấp hành Trung ương if you're going to notify us. And if you struggle, remember, you also know us directly. For instance, like this, if you can get a hold of us, if you have direct communication with us via email or messenger or whatnot, ping us right away because there is an urgency to preventing harm to other young members. Okay. Rồi, anh Dương, are you able to update my pending status to ask đoàn trưởng? Anh Bum hasn't updated my role. All right, so please talk to anh Bum. Okay, and you appointed me as temporary lead đoàn trưởng of Journal. Oh, that's Joe. All right, I apologize. Okay, very cool. Can reporting to VEYM be kept anonymous? Correct. Yes, reporting to VEYM is anonymous. To date, there's been a dozen full of cases that we've worked on, and the reporting individual, you can choose to be anonymous or you can identify yourself. And then we have a responsibility to also protect your anonymity when we deal with it. Yeah. All right, these are all very good questions. This meeting is recorded, right? Where it will be uploaded to. So the meeting here is recorded. Anh Thư ơi, once you have this, maybe we can upload this on our website, yeah, our resource page của phong trào, yeah, yeah. So you can have it, and you can also reach out to Trưởng Anh Thư too. This is good. Okay, all right. Any other questions, real quick, and then we'll transition over to huấn luyện viên continuing professional development. Going once.
Anh Dương, chắc cho em bổ sung thêm một cái về cái code of conduct thì cái này là cái transition from paper sign cái code of conduct to digital, right? Thì bây giờ cái process của xin thăng cấp á, mình không cần phải submit vô cái code of conduct paper nữa, mà các đoàn trưởng cũng như các đoàn trưởng trước khi submit cái promotion request to VEYM headquarter đó, make sure là các trưởng đó đã sign it electronic online already. Cho nha, các đoàn trưởng please confirm với các individual who want to get promote, sign it before submit in the application. So no need to submit in the COC in paper anymore. Cảm ơn anh Dương.
Rồi, thank you, Trưởng Khánh nhiều. All right, excellent. Right, if there are no other question, I see one more in the chat. Is there any action step that's needed by internal leader need to do? We received the report. Does there need to be an announcement? It's up to the Ban chấp hành. And so if Liên đoàn receives a misconduct of some sort, Ban chấp hành Liên đoàn receives it, as outlined there in the document, please notify Ban chấp hành Trung ương, right? Because in terms of communicating to other Liên đoàn across phong trào, that comes from Ban chấp hành Trung ương. And again, to protect others while we're exploring or following through with the facts or the inquiry process. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Jimmy. If we sign online, how does the chapter president know who signed and who hasn't? Right, Joe? I think you answered that question, right, Joe? If the chapter president.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can request from VEYM IT. So we can produce a list of those that have signed or currently unsigned. You just have to send the request. We don't want too many people to have the information except for the appropriate members to have that kind of information.
Yeah. All right. And then Joe, Liên đoàn Sinai asked if we can make it possible for the Liên đoàn trưởng and Hai Liên đoàn phó to see the code of conduct status. Absolutely. We can do that because you are elected officials của Liên đoàn. So absolutely. Yeah. So maybe
if
IT
they send the request.
Yep.
Yeah, if they send the request, and then we can produce it each time. The thing is, because it refreshes, so then we can.
Very good.
You just send a request, we'll send you the list right away.
Xin chào, gửi to Liên đoàn nha.
But is it possible to make it where we don't have to go through IT?
You mean just make it general across the board? Liên đoàn trưởng and Hai Liên đoàn phó. Yeah, I don't see a reason why not, because they're all elected officers của Liên đoàn. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. But communicate that through. And then Denny dashboard coming. Yep. I mean, I can't stress enough. IT has been tremendously helpful with many of these operations. All right. All 18 years and above need to sign. Correct. If you're an adult member của phong trào, please have the individual sign and then have the system online. Yeah. Right. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you, các trưởng thật là nhiều. I know we went over a little bit 8 phút into the huấn luyện viên, but hopefully các trưởng the huấn luyện viên can stay a little bit. Last call. Any other items? Any question? Rồi, nếu không, thank you. Nhất là các quân trưởng nha. For those who may be departing, I know huấn luyện viên will stay back. Please communicate it, and especially những cái item nó pertain to phong trào. I think that's critical. Tại những cái đâm kia là your defunct, your parish will have, but charity to phong trào with purchasing uniform, wearing uniform, communicating, working with minors, going to camp, transportation, etc. It's important that we follow through. Phong trào could only thrive when we all work together. When one of our members is harmed, that impacts the whole phong trào. When one person disregard our uniform and disrespect it, it reflects on phong trào. When one of our young youth members been taken advantage in some capacity, it does impact the phong trào together. So please work with us together, journey on that nha. Rồi, cảm ơn các trưởng thật là nhiều. All right, real quick, we'll transition over to các huấn luyện viên. So